Has anybody ever wondered why Zora Neale Hurston is never truly recognized as one of the great heroes of Black history? How does an up-and-coming, prestigious Black female writer end up being hit with child indecency charges? And not only that, how does this lady fall so far from grace that she ends up in the trash bin of history? This is Ashley with Ashley Says So, and I am back with another old Hollywood scandal, and today we are going to talk about Miss Zora Neale Hurston. After this disclaimer, all of my videos are for entertainment purposes. Everything in them is rumor, gossip, and scandal that I get from books, word of mouth, on TV. Let's get to it. Zora Neale Hurston was born on January the 7th, 1891 in Notasulga, Alabama. Her mother's name was Lucy Ann Hurston, and her father's name was John Hurston, and on top of Zora, the Hurstons had 7 other children. Now, since Zora's father was a preacher and her mother was a school teacher, Zora was pretty much smart from the very beginning. And there are a lot of things that she experienced in her childhood that would shape her reality as well as her personality for the rest of her life. One of the biggest things was when she and her family moved to the all-Black community of Eatonville, Florida. Now, Eatonville was not a big community like Tulsa, Oklahoma. However, the Black people in Eatonville were thriving. There were businesses there, stores down the street, church houses there. If I'm not mistaken, they had their own little letter carrying businesses or mail business. They even had their own Black government. As a matter of fact, Zora's father became the mayor of Eatonville. And so Zora, as a little girl, seeing all of this Black greatness around her, seeing these Black people not ask anybody for a doggone thing and succeeding, this instilled a sense of pride in her. And some people say that this pride was so strong that it became Zora's blessing as well as her curse. And so from everything I've told you so far, it seems like Zora's life path was pretty much set. But at the age of 14, tragedy struck. Her mother ended up passing away and her father got remarried very quickly. And Zora and her stepmother did not get along, and so her stepmother convinced her father to send Zora away to a boarding school, and that is what he did. Now, while Zora was away at boarding school, she did nothing but read several books. She also had started writing, and she also was developing the art of storytelling. So by the time Zora was 20 years old and off by herself, the only thing she wanted to do was continue to pursue a higher education. And the first college she went to was Morgan Academy, which is now known as Morgan State University. And soon after going there, she transferred to Howard University. And it was at Howard that Zora would truly soar. First off, she was a very popular and pretty girl around campus. She even ended up joining the Zeta Phi Beta sorority. And when it came down to her writing skills, Zora was on top. She joined the literature club. Even more than that, she helped write the school's inaugural address. Another thing that Zora excelled at was anthropology, and her research skills were unmatched. As a matter of fact, it was her research skills that got her offered a scholarship to Barnard College. Now, people love to talk about how Zora Neale Hurston was the first Black student to attend as well as graduate from Barnard College, and that is great. That's all well and fine. But when we slow down and talk about that scholarship, this was not a scholarship that was just handed to Zora from a do-gooder so she could pursue further education. This scholarship came with major strings attached. The lady who gave Zora the scholarship was a lady by the name of Annie Nathan Meyer. And Annie Nathan Meyer was working on a play, and she wanted Zora to do all of the groundwork and all of the research for her. Now, Miss Annie's play was entitled Black Souls, and it pretty much went through the history of lynching in the Black community. And when the play Black Souls premiered, everybody ranted and raved because they could not believe how a woman that was of another race could tell the story of Black people so well, could tell about their pain and suffering due to these lynchings so well. But do you think she ever mentioned little old Zora, who did all of the research and groundwork for her? Not at all. And Zora didn't complain. She just kept on moving forward. And before you know it, she was offered another scholarship. Prominent Black author Alan Locke introduced Zora to a lady by the name of Charlotte Osgood Mason. And Charlotte Mason told Zora she would pay her $200 a month. And in return, she wanted Zora to travel to all of the Black communities in the South, and she wanted her to gather information about the Negro music, the folklore, the literature, hoodoo, everything that was Black culture. This lady wanted all of the information. And just like the last time, Zora excelled in her research. And so pretty soon she was doing research for multiple people. For Alan Lomax, the man who discovered lead belly. She even did research for the Guggenheim Institute. And simultaneously, while she was doing this excellent research, Zora was also crafting stories. She basically became known as one of the premier up-and-coming Black writers, along with Countee Cullen, Alan Locke, and Langston Hughes. In fact, one of the first big writing opportunities that she got was an opportunity to write in Opportunity magazine, and that was an all-Black magazine. This was a huge accomplishment for Zora Neale Hurston, but unfortunately, it also seemed to be the very start of her upcoming downfall. You see, Zora was now grouped with, as well as hanging around, all of these elite Black authors, where allegedly she even had an apartment right next to Langston Hughes and I think Richard Wright. I'm not sure. She had an apartment living close to them, and they would all gather at Zora's house, sharing ideas, having a good time. But when Zora started to talk about her views for the Black community, people started giving her the side eye. You see, Zora thought of Black people very differently from the authors that she was hanging around. She felt like Black people already had power and success inside of them. And not only inside of them, they already had it in their Black communities. And she felt like everything should stay like that. Well, those other Black authors were opposed to that. They felt like Blacks should try to more intermingle with the white race, try to fit in more with the prominent race of the time. And right now, these were just ideas. Everybody was just having a conversation, so it really wasn't that big of a deal. However, when Zora started to author her books and get her books published, and she was pushing a different narrative than what the other prominent Black authors were pushing at the time, now this really became a problem. You see, Zora's books were more about love, light, and laughter, and finding the beauty in being Black and the beauty in being part of the Black community. Whereas the other authors, their books were more about Black suffering, Black pain, Black man and woman can't go nowhere without the white man on his back, on his neck. And Zora just did not feel like that type of writing was good for the Black community. And so the Black elite authors and Black elite organizations, they let Zora Neale Hurston pass when she wrote her first book. But by the time Zora got to her third book, which was one of her most popular books, when they found out that book still didn't talk about Black suffering, they were upset about that. So allegedly, a group of them told Zora, "We trying to get Black folks to see how much pain they're in, so they know that they can want better for themselves. More than that, we're trying to get the white community to see how Blacks are suffering up under them. So, things can change, laws can change." And this right here was something that Zora could not understand. And so she told them, why do I have to write about pain and suffering? If Black folks want to read about pain and suffering and getting hung and all this kind of stuff, they can go read one of y'all's books. Better yet, tell them to go read Richard Wright's book, Native Son. Let them go read that if they want to hear about Black suffering so bad. That's not me. I want them to know that they are somebody. They don't have to beg nobody to be somebody. They are somebody already. And so allegedly, it got so bad that the Black elites basically told Zora, either you're going to change up your writing and you're going to start talking about Black suffering, or you're pretty much going to lose everything you got. Well, finally, out of nowhere, Zora writes a book called How It Feels to Be Colored Me. And so you have all of these Black authors, the Black elite, they all slapping hands. Yes, she finna tell them, how bad it is for all the Black folks out here. They opened up their doggone book. Zora was in there talking about Black beauty, was in there talking about Black pride, talking about how she loved herself and grew up around black folks that loved themselves, took care of themselves, made their own money, made their own way in the world. And the elite folks were furious. Oh, baby, they wrote all kind of scathing reviews. All those other authors. We don't know what planet Zora Neale Hurston is living on, but she making stuff up if she act like her community don't have trouble with white folk. It's clear by Zora's books that she must be a race traitor because she trying to go against black folks trying to better themselves. She's diminishing the black struggle. She's sitting up here really acting like black folks can have peace when she know that we be having trouble with these white folks. Oh, they talked about her like a dog. But throughout all of this, Zora Neale Hurston stood firm. She knew that these were lies. She knew that she loved black people. She just felt like black people didn't need nobody to be great. They don't need to blend in with nobody's communities. They don't need to beg for help. They got everything they need inside of them. And she felt like instead of writing about doom and gloom all the time and having black folks scared and stuff all the time, how about you write something that tells them they're beautiful? How about you write something that makes them feel empowered? And instead of writing about the minority incidents all the time, why don't y'all ever write about the majority incident? Truly, Zora was sick of it. Every magazine of the time, they would write something about, maybe Rosewood had burned down, maybe Tulsa or something like that. But however many black communities burned down, that was the minority number. You had black communities being burned down, yes, but the majority of black communities were doing just fine. They had money. They had pride. They had everything they needed. So Zora didn't understand, hey, maybe we can inform people about these incidences once, just to tell these people's story. But why are we dwelling on this when we got the majority of black folks doing just fine? But honestly, Zora Neale Hurston may as well have been standing up against the machine, baby. These people had the power. They had the organizations behind them. She did not. And so when it came to the elites, any story that they can push about black people that equaled victimhood or scared and shamed and all this kind of stuff, they would push that. And so once it was clear that Zora would not get on board with them, she started to notice that the promotion for her books, her novels, started to disappear. You know what I'm saying? All of a sudden, certain black publications were not mentioning her anymore. So her sales started to drop lower and lower. But even with everything falling down around her, Zora just held fast to her beliefs. And so she drove it home even more. See, the black elite people, as well as black elite organizations, had started talking about integrating way back in the late 1940s, early 1950s. And they would write all of these books and newspaper articles about, how black people needed to integrate. That's the only way black people would ever be considered as equal. If they integrated, they could pretty much prove to white people that they were good. You know what I'm saying? That they deserved to be kind of let in their community. And just by the way that I described that, y'all already know the way Zora Neale Hurston was sitting up there looking. Baby, Zora wasn't finna beg nobody for nothing, least of all acceptance. So while the civil rights organizations and all of these elite authors and everything are publishing all the things that I just mentioned, Zora is sitting up there writing her own articles and writing her own books and making her own statements. And she's sitting over there all by her little self, holding her little flag saying, I don't want integration. I don't think that's good for the black community. Oh my gosh. And it's admirable what she was trying to do, you know what I'm saying? Because she was standing firm on her beliefs, but she was just one person, so she couldn't explain her beliefs the whole way through. She couldn't add on the fact that the reason she felt like things should stay segregated was because she felt like black communities would flourish without interference. But like I said, Zora was just one person, so she couldn't get the full idea across. So when she was making her little statements and she was saying, I don't think integration is good. You know what I'm saying? I need to just be segregated. To the black masses or the black public, they felt like she was a cool. They felt like she was a traitor. They felt like she was holding them back because the machine over here was telling them that, the only way the blacks could survive was by integrating. And so when you have a people, any people, not just black people, when you have a people being fed this stuff every single day, they're going to think that way. And so Zora over here by her lonesome, sitting up here saying something different, even though she may have had a great point to make, people weren't interested in listening to the rest of her point. Once she said she was against integration, that was it. And then Zora started to get into real deep and troublesome territory. She started to question some of these high up black organizations. Zora started to say things like, y'all big black organizations, y'all sure don't do nothing but a lot of talking. Sure ain't never no action. She started to make statements about how she noticed that big black organizations were always around when an injustice happened to a black person. The organization was always around to get people organized and, cry about oppression. But Zora felt that if the organization really wanted to help, why not give money to the black people? If you're coming out and you're organizing because a black person was fired by a white person, why not give the black community money so they can build a black company so that person never has to work for a white organization again? Instead of crying and trying to force black folks into white communities because the white communities have the better houses, better water fountains and all this kind of stuff, why not just give money to the black community and let them build up nice houses? Give them the money to give them a good water fountain. Like, she just felt like, wouldn't that make more sense instead of pushing them into the white neighborhood? She basically was trying to say that a lot of the black leading organizations of the time were making money off of the black suffering, but they were not doing anything to really right the black race. And I really don't know if Zora just didn't think that it was dangerous to talk about that at that time, or if she didn't really care. But if you go and look at real history, there have been a lot of black people who have spoken against big organizations, not only big black organizations, but big organizations, period, that things didn't end so well for them. Matter of fact, people were kind of whispering things like that about Darren Seals. Darren Seals was a Ferguson activist, and at first he was working with a lot of big-time black organizations. But allegedly, after a while, Darren started to say things very similar to what Zora was saying. He felt like a lot of these organizations came in just to organize and protest and get donations, and once they got their donations, baby, they was gone. Ain't helped nobody. Police still beating folks up. Essentially, everything was pretty much exactly the way it was before the big organization came in. And so in 2016, Darren Seals was found shot to death and stuffed into a car where it was set on fire. And I'm not really trying to say that big black organizations are sending out hitmen, to people who are speaking against them. But I'm just saying there are a lot of people throughout history where they would speak out against certain things, and next thing you know, they were taken off the planet. So to get back to Zora, like I said, I just don't know if she saw the danger, but if she did, she sure enough didn't care. And thankfully, Zora was not taken off of the planet, but gossip claims she didn't get away completely unscathed. By 1948, she was living in Harlem, and she befriended who some would say was a landlady. Other people said the lady was a neighbor. Whatever the case, she befriended a young black lady by the name of Mamie Allen, and Mamie Allen was the mother to a teenage boy by the name of Billy Allen. Now, this story, like I say all the time, has several versions. I'm just going to go with the version that made the most sense to me. So allegedly, Billy Allen had mental problems. He was said to wreak havoc around the neighborhood. Allegedly, the young boy was becoming a menace. And also allegedly, Mamie was one of those mothers who didn't do anything about it. She basically ignored it. And so Zora allegedly starts to suggest to Mamie, you need to get a hold to him. Clearly something must be wrong with him. He must have a mental disorder. So how about you take him down to Bellevue Hospital and see if they can evaluate him, see if he can be helped. So according to rumor, Mamie did take her son Billy Allen to Bellevue for a few weeks. But even though she did this, apparently she resented Zora being in her business, kind of telling her what to do with her own son. But even though she allegedly held this resentment, she didn't tell Zora about it. She just held it on the inside. Well, Zora is just living her life when later on that year, the police approach her and they tell her that she is under arrest for being indecent with a child. Basically for actual assault of a child. Young Billy Allen has accused her as well as 2 other adults of assaulting him and his friends. So when Zora is informed of this, she is like, I've never touched that little boy. I am innocent. She even tells the police officers, I'll take a lie detector test right now to prove my innocence. They denied her that privilege. Well, Zora ends up bailing out, but they make sure to tell her that these charges are sticking and she is going to trial. But Zora was smart. She knew that when stuff goes to trial, which could take forever and a day, people have time to prepare stuff here, maybe fix stuff there to make it look like something that it wasn't. So Zora petitioned the court. She told them, let me have a preliminary hearing so we can get everything on the table because I want to prove my innocence that I haven't done anything to this little boy. And so the judge granted Zora's request. But although Zora did well in requesting the preliminary hearing so she could rush having everything on the table, her preliminary hearing still didn't come fast enough to save her completely. Because somebody, allegedly that worked at the police office or worked at the courthouse, went straight to those big black elite organizations and big black elite newspapers and dropped a bug in their ear. And so while Zora was sitting waiting for that preliminary hearing, those newspapers got to typing up a storm, baby. One of them was called The Afro-American and the other newspaper was called The New York Age. Once the newspapers printed this information to the public assumption turned against her. She already did not have a good reputation with the public, especially the black public anyway. And so pretty much with these news articles circulating, painting Zora Neale Hurston out to be a monster, that is what everybody believed. And Zora couldn't do anything but wait until this hearing came to prove her innocence. Once it finally came, Zora's lawyers went right there to the stand and cleared everything out because they asked Mamie as well as Billy Allen, how in the heck did Zora do anything to Billy when a lot of those dates he mentioned she did it to him, Zora was off over in Honduras. Not only did they come with that evidence, they quickly got Billy to admit that he had made up the whole story in the first place, and they got Mamie to admit that the only reason that she even believed Billy when he said that about Zora is because she didn't like Zora. So anything that could bring Zora Neale Hurston down a peg, she was willing to do. And so as the case started to quickly fall apart, everybody wanted Mamie and Billy to just, hush up. Y'all done lost. Go on now. But one of them didn't stop talking, and that was Billy Allen. He wanted to know why everybody in the courtroom was acting all surprised by him admitting that he made this whole story up when he had already told them that he had made the whole story up. So if the law enforcement investigators, detectives, and everybody else already had a confession from this young boy, why then did they push this against Zora anyway? Could it have been somebody was getting paid up under the table to destroy Zora Neale Hurston, put her away for life so she couldn't speak like she wanted to? Zora sure as heck thought so. Matter of fact, per gossip, Zora felt like she knew exactly who was trying to bury her for life. And the people she allegedly named was Richard Wright and W.E.B. Du Bois, men who were a part of the so-called black elite organizations. And she felt like if she couldn't prove that they had set the whole thing up with the charges and all that against her, the one thing she definitely felt like she could prove was that they were the ones who possibly wrote all of those articles against her without even trying to find out the real truth. So Zora took her frustrations out on pen and paper, and she wrote a letter to the editor of Opportunity magazine. And in this letter she wrote, she basically said, I know that it was Richard Wright and W.E.B. Du Bois who tried to bury me, but those so-called intellectuals were so eager to put me under, but they forgot to check the dates. Had they checked the dates, they would have known that I was nowhere near Harlem on the days they tried to accuse me of. And again, that's of course not verbatim, but that is what Zora told this man. But even though Zora was able to write a letter to the editor and tell him personally how she felt, she still had no way of clearing her name to the public. And if you're wondering why Zora just didn't write her own magazine or write her own book or something like that to put it out to the public, you have to remember, by this point of Zora's career, she was pretty much metaphorically assassinated. What I mean by that is, yes, Zora the person, the human, was still alive, but her identity as an author was pretty much in the grave. Once it was found she was going against the big black elite things of the day, they had called all of their publishers. Hey, we ain't working with Zora no more. Don't publish nothing she got going on. All of their editors, calling all of the marketers and the promotion team. And so if Zora did scrape up enough money to start a magazine or write her own book to explain how she was innocent to the public, who in the world was going to see it? Maybe she could get a small-time local publisher to give her maybe 100 copies of the book or something. Where was she going to sell them? She didn't have no marketing or promotion team behind her. The best she could hope for was on her local bookshelf. So there was no way of telling the public anything. They pretty much canceled her. That's kind of the stuff we would use today when people are just kind of shut out of society, when their voice is taken away from them, where they can't let people know the way they feel or anything because they've said or done something wrong. People cancel them. That's what happened to her. And so being in this canceled or pretty much metaphorically dead position, not only could she not tell people she was innocent, she also couldn't make any money. She wasn't getting no book sales no more. She also lost multiple regular jobs that she had held in the past. She was quickly on her way to being destitute. And to be honest with you, a lot of people, by the time they get to this position, find themselves crawling back to the so-called masters or whoever is blocking them and, tell them, okay, fine, I give up. I'm not going to have my beliefs no more. I'll just say whatever you want me to do. I'll do whatever you want me to do. Just please, I need some money. I can't pay my bills. I cannot eat. Please, let me back in. I don't have no views no more. Most people would and will do this. Zora just would not do it. And so when the early 1950s came around, Zora was just steady falling through grace. However, in the year 1952, or maybe it was 1953, she was thrown a semi-lifeline. The editor of the newspaper, the Pittsburgh Courier, wanted her to go down and research the case of Ruby McCollum. She was the wealthy married black woman that allegedly had an affair with a white man, and the white man became obsessed and pretty much started to attack her family and, basically try to make her a sex slave. And so she ended up killing that man. If you guys want to know more about that story, go watch my video. I'll put the link in the top comment. But anyways, the Pittsburgh Courier, like I said, threw Zora a lifeline. And they were like, we want you to go down there, get everything you know, and cover this story. And so Zora went to do that. She sat through the first part of the trial. Allegedly, she even talked to Ruby a little while, did excellent like always. Well, when the newspaper tried to pay her something less than what was initially agreed upon, Zora ended up declining and the paper ended up firing her. And she basically gave all of her research that she had done to the new person that they hired to cover the trial. And gossip claims that the new person used all of Zora's research, added a little bit to himself, and then he ended up writing a book. And then in the book, barely even mentioned Zora Neale Hurston. And honestly, after this lifeline kind of thrown to her about this Ruby McCollum deal, really nothing else professional happened for Zora Neale Hurston. And the more she faded away, the more destitute she became. It got so bad that by the late 1950s, she was living back in Florida and she was living in a welfare group home. And Zora tried to continue her life as best she could. She made friends with her neighbors. She also worked as a maid to try to bring some money inside of her life. But no matter how positive she tried to be, every time she opened a newspaper or a magazine and she saw something about her peers, or people that used to be her peers, getting all kind of achievements and accolades, it truly left her heart with a big fat hole, because Zora knew that she could be famous and have all of those accolades too, if she basically sold her soul. All she had to do was change up her views and pretty much follow the crowd. But that pride I've been talking about since the beginning of the video was so strong that changing her views was just simply not allowed. And so she ended up suffering 2 strokes in the late 1950s. And she started to write her last novel. It was called The Great King Herod. But when she called around to try to find editors and the publisher, and she found out she still was blackballed, I think this right here was probably just a little bit too much for Zora. And on February the 19th, 1960, 69-year-old Zora Neale Hurston died broke and penniless in a welfare home of hypertension. They took her body to the funeral home. I don't even know if they had a viewing, service, memorial, or anything. Some sources say that they kind of just tossed her in the ground, covered her up with dirt. She didn't even have a headstone. Even more terrible than that, whoever the cleanup man was for her room at the group home just took all of Zora's literature and burnt it up in the trash bin. Luckily, one of her friends ended up going through the ashes, and they were able to at least save a couple of pages of Zora's last book, The Great King Herod, and that book is actually out today, but most people believe that a lot of the words in this book that's out are not Zora's words because there was not much saved from that fire. And we are at the end of the video, but I want to kind of focus in on what they said first made Zora controversial. The fact that she would not write negative things about what Black people were going through or the Black community and all of that. Maybe it was deeper than Zora just trying to focus on the positive. Maybe the lady actually had a deeper understanding of Black people, or not just Black people, humans on a deeper level. And the reason I say this is because Zora was adamant that Black people should see themselves as beautiful and powerful and be happy and all of that good stuff. And it matches very closely to what this genius doctor, Dr. Jill Pookrum, was saying in one of her lectures. I'm gonna let you hear a little bit of it. Listen to it and think about what she's saying.
So self-interest means that you have to have a feeling about yourself, one that allows you to give yourself a value. So when we define ourselves as something that when we think about our name or when we look ourselves in the mirror, that we automatically go into a discomforting feeling, it is the foundation for addiction. Now you want to know why people are addicts? That is why. It is because when they think about themselves, the esteem that they have assigned themselves, they automatically go into pain, and to get out of the pain, they use a substance or an activity. So if you decide that being a Black man in America is a horrible thing, then obviously every day you wake up, you got to do something about the pain. Oh, but this is real serious. You've got to do something about the pain. So therefore, when I wake up and recognize that my name is Joe Blow and I'm a Black man in America and I don't have this and I don't have that and I don't have the other, then it's like, yes, where's the pipe? Where's the marijuana, etc., and we'll sit this day out. It is because the perception of these individuals is such that they create their own emotional pain and they want out. So why would a person think that being a Black man in America is a problem? Do you know anybody cranking out Black men in a meal? Of course not, because it is a divine state of existence. Only the Creator makes those. Which means then that if that's where it comes from, it has the characteristics and attributes of the source. Now, understanding what that means now goes into your own value of what the Creator would be. Because if that means that now you have dominion over the planet, that you have the capacity to do anything that you so put your mind to, etc., now that puts you into a whole different reflection of self. So you don't have to sit up and beg anybody and tell them that you need certain gratuities. You don't need these crutches. Because when you understand that you're a manifestation of the Creator, you can learn anything you want to and any time you want to and apply it. So you don't have to apologize for this. Being a Black woman, I mean, this is the same issue. You know, well, I'm a Black woman, so that means da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, obviously, when she overeats or when she's actually smoking drugs herself or marijuana, or she's basically a workaholic because she thinks that working 24 hours is going to make her a better person. All of this is because her esteem of self is less than what the body and the emotional body knows that it should be. It is the fact that she has to redefine who she is, change her name, or give herself a broader definition of self and be able to actualize that. But the idea that something divine now having to be apologized for that's inadequate is totally a problem.
Hey guys, I just wanted to butt in real quick because while I was researching Zora and finding out all of this stuff, something else popped into my mind. You know how they said Zora wanted to write books that basically showed the positive side of Black, but that wasn't allowed? It reminded me of what we hear around the Black community even today. We've heard that there have been Black artists who have tried to make positive and uplifting music, but when they took them to the higher ups told them, no, that song's not going to sell. You need something more edgy, more hardcore, more sassy, and things like that. And so they would basically make these artists go back to the drawing board. Then you have the artists that stood on business and were like, no, I'm going to release my song no matter what. And they put out the song, but nobody ever hears the song. Allegedly, those higher ups take away the promotion, so the song ends up flopping. And again, these are just rumors that float around the Black community, but what if there is some truth to them? Could there be an actual agenda to make Black people see themselves as inferior, or to make Black people see themselves as thugs and oppressed and everything else? Could there be an actual agenda for that? Is it possible that the higher-ups understand that in order to control Blacks as a race, in order to keep their mental health down, their spirit down, their energy down, in order to keep them oppressed in the physical world, you would first need to do it in the mental and emotional world? Could that agenda actually exist? And then that leads me to my second question. If it does exist, then why? Why is it so important to keep a certain group of people down no matter the cost? So, maybe Zora Neale Hurston really was the smartest in the room. And maybe the Black hero that they threw in the trash actually cared about Black people more than some of the heroes that we uplift. Anyway, this is Ashley with Ashley Says So. This is the end of the old Hollywood scandalous tale of Miss Zora Neale Hurston. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you guys go subscribe to my husband's channel, The Mysterious Black Bandit. And once again, I hope you liked the video. Please subscribe. I will see you next time.